UFC Freedom 250 on the White House lawn just wrapped up, but the shockwaves from the event are still continuing. Was this, as some people are saying, one of the greatest combat sports events of all time, up there with the Thriller in Manila, or at the very least, one of the best UFC events in recent memory? Or, as some others are saying, people less familiar with the sport or maybe more liberal leaning see this event as the epitome of corruption and right wing extremism, showing everything that's wrong with politics in this country. Hey, I'm Denzel Cadet, the managing member of Cadet Legal and the host of Watch the Ops. And I'm not only a hardcore combat sports fan, but I'm also a practicing corporate transactional attorney. Here is my reaction to the card as a whole and my 4 takeaways to help you understand this event and its implications from a legal and business standpoint. Let's watch the ops. First of all, let's talk about the card. Now, this card was solid. That was one of the questions. Besides all the hype and the marketing and the push behind it and the special circumstances around the event, how were the fights themselves going to play out? Part of this discussion was set up as this event, this White House card, compared to the Netflix MVP card that happened several weeks ago. I will say that as a combat sports fan, this card delivered. It was, I would say, at least an 8 out of a 10, maybe a 9 out of 10. We had solid matchups from the first fight of the 7 fight card all the way through the co-main and the main. We had all finishes on this card, similar to the Netflix event. And yes, some of these fights, to be fair, were not surprising at all. When they put Michael Chandler against Mauricio Hufi, we knew it was going to happen. But some of the other fights answered questions that we did have, including, could Alex Pereira go up to heavyweight and capture a third belt? I was hopeful, but a little worried. And yeah, he wasn't able to do it. He was too small. And we can't forget the huge star of this event, Justin Gaethje, who pulled off a historic upset. Whether this card is one of the all-time great MMA cards, fight cards of all time, we can debate separately. But Justin Gaethje's upset win over Ilia Topuria definitely ranks in the all-time upsets, both being a championship fight, looking at the odds, looking at the age, looking at the hype behind Ilia. And it was a definitive victory. Justin beat Ilia's you know what in a way that we had never seen and that we did not anticipate. By the way, this is my mea culpa. I was wrong about this fight. For people on YouTube complaining, I predicted that Ilia would finish Justin, and he did not. In fact, Ilia was completely outmatched in this fight. Part of the problem here, in my defense, I did point out that we had never seen Ilia fight against someone who does the damage that Justin did. And the other part in my defense is I did not know that Ilia was going to come out and fight Justin with such a stupid strategy, coming forward, not moving his head, and just trying to slug it out as if he thought he was going to get him out in the first round. That was a huge mistake. With that said, all credit goes to Justin. His durability, his savagery, and his ability to inflict damage, especially in that first round where Ilia implemented a bad game plan, allowed him to pull off a huge upset. And that storyline, along with the great matchups throughout the card, really made this a solid and I would say even a great MMA event. As a fight fan, I have no complaints about this card. Not only were the matchups great, but the production was solid. The live Marine band was amazing. Every time you have live music at a fight, I feel like it takes it to another level. My only complaint, if I had one about the event, was just the pacing. It took forever to get through those 7 fights, but it was a great card. As an aside, one of the ways that the sports world and MMA is a great case study in business and legal operations is in how the UFC strategically chooses where they're going to host fights based on the state rules and the state law. Even in this White House card, there was a bit of that choice of law, that forum shopping at work. And it played out in how the main event, that championship lightweight fight, played out. This was not a normally regulated event. The UFC, because they were on federal property, decided that they didn't want to go with normal District of Columbia fight regulation, athletic commission regulation. And so those rules and that regulatory structure was not in place. So when you think about the third round, when Ilya was battered, his face was lumped up, it was messed up. He looked like Martin in the episode where he fought Tommy the Hitman Hearns. He really shouldn't have been allowed to continue after that third round. But you notice how he got that weird 2-minute break where there was a dance between the doctor and the referee asking him whether he wanted to continue or not. This was definitely not according to normal MMA rules, but we did have a special event where the UFC decided to opt into no local regulation, and they were able to do that because it was on the White House lawn. So this is another example of how rules aren't just abstract, they affect how the fights play out and affect the fan experience and the bottom line. For more on how the UFC strategically picks jurisdictions and choice of law in order to expand and grow their business, check out our other video. Now, as we think about this event and the larger implications, I do want to point to 4 takeaways that really are shaped by the law and business structures behind and around this event. Those 4 takeaways have to do with the fan reaction to this card, the way that this card was distributed by Paramount, Paramount's handling or not handling of the controversy, the Josh Hokit, Michelle Obama comments in this card, and lastly, the larger market, socioeconomic, political implications of this card. The UFC, the Trump administration, Paramount may have won the battle as far as putting on a good event, but they may have lost the war as far as some of the big pet projects they have in the pipeline. Let's start with the fan reaction to this card. All these fight fans who are touting this as one of the greatest cards ever, or at least the greatest one in a long time, should realize that part of the reason that they feel this way is because we've been starved for solid cards, starved for fight cards where it showed that the UFC cared about our fan experience. We've put out several videos about the decrease in the quality of the cards, about the inconsistency from event to event. And what we've pointed out is this is in large part due to legal and business reasons. The UFC's business model has changed. Their revenue driver is no longer the number of views or the number of sales of pay-per-view events per se, or the gates as much. Yes, they'll still play into their bottom line, but ever since the ESPN era, continuing through this Paramount rights deal, the UFC's revenue, its business model, is based on the number of events it delivers to its rights partner, to its distribution partner. It's not based on how well the individual events do. And so the UFC has been a bit lazy. They haven't cared as much about the quality of the card on average because all they need to do is deliver events. This is not unique to the Paramount era. This was also true with ESPN. But I just want to take a step back and say, hey, if you appreciated that card and it seems so much better than anything you had experienced in a while, it is because it was. And it shows what happens when the UFC cares. The reason that they don't care most of the time, and the reason why you should not expect cards like this all the time going forward, is because their business model under these rights deals, starting with ESPN, continuing with Paramount, are not based on how well they engage individual fans and get viewers. The second takeaway, which we've already mentioned, but it deserves revisiting, is that the way Paramount chose to distribute this card on Paramount Plus only and not on CBS is based on business and legal strategy as well. Remember, just like the UFC's model has changed, is not based on pay-per-views, similarly, that means that Paramount's revenue is based on a different model than we've seen in the past. Paramount needs to get as many subscribers as possible, and that subscription is at flat rates. So their business model, their revenue is based on getting as many subscribers as possible to join, in particular, to see the UFC events. So while streaming on CBS would bring more eyes and help spread awareness about Paramount and its connection to MMA, it would not drive their bottom line the same way as keeping these fights behind a paywall. For that reason, they chose to stream on Paramount and not on CBS, which does undermine some of the rhetoric that we had around this event, that it was, an event for America and meant to build widespread appreciation of MMA. Paramount's decision to stream on Paramount Plus was driven by the structure of their contract with the UFC. Thirdly, let's look at this relationship from the standpoint of the controversy around Josh Hokit. Paramount's response or non-response to Josh Hokit's controversial comments about Michelle Obama, which, by the way, completely unacceptable. I know a lot of my fellow MMA fans are more comfortable with this type of language and tend to lean on the conservative side. That doesn't matter to me. I have a certain baseline of respect that I think women need to be treated with, and especially someone like the first lady who held a role of what should be respect and dignity in our country. More importantly, I'm tired of this trend of people thinking, whether it's in the mainstream media or whether it's society in general, thinking that it's okay to attack Black women, women of color, and that we're not going to say anything. So if you thought that that was cool, or you think that people are reacting to the comments that Michelle Obama is a man by Josh Hokit, you're an idiot. And if that pisses you off, then you don't have to follow my channel. I'm going to talk about the business and legal around this, but I just need to say that Michelle did not deserve those shots. And also, I'm all for trash talk. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a huge hip hop fan. Coarse language doesn't bother me. But even as trash talk, even as a shtick post fight, it wasn't even that entertaining. It only entertained people who have very few brain cells. Now, besides the fact that it was unacceptable, whatever you feel about that, it clearly upset a lot of people. People who, again, because of the paywall, did not see the actual fights are still getting on regular TV on CBS the news of the controversy and the drama from this card. Regardless of your political leanings, even if you're someone who doesn't care about the way that Michelle was talked about or the way women are talked about in general, this from a business perspective is something that Paramount at least needs to analyze and figure out how they're going to address. Now, if Paramount chooses to say nothing and does not put pressure on the UFC to take any type of disciplinary action against Josh Hokit, which, by the way, that is likely what's going to happen. I've seen some memes across the internet, some images where they're saying, oh, the UFC is not going to let Josh Hokit fight anymore. That's just not true. We've seen historically, consistently, the UFC does not punish its fighters for offensive speech. They tend to support free speech, particularly if it's in line with their political views. So even when they're annoyed by the antics or the offensive speech of certain of their fighters, they have shown they are not willing to discipline fighters. More importantly, we have seen rights partners of the UFC, when the UFC executives or their fighters engage in bad behavior or say and do things that put the rights partner in a bad light, the rights partner has generally been silent and not put any pressure on the UFC to do anything. We saw that in the ESPN Disney era, where we had fighters say all types of things. We had Dana White, the president of the UFC himself, slapping his wife on camera. It was recorded. There was no discipline. There was no pressure from Disney. You would think the family company to make some type of statement. Dana White was back at work the next day. We've seen in the Paramount era so far, Sean Strickland has been very critical of the Paramount deal. Other fighters have been critical of the Paramount deal. We've seen fighters, including Sean Strickland, say racial slurs in other contexts. Fair enough, not on UFC broadcasts, but they've also said offensive things during press conferences. And we see Paramount, like Disney, like Fox before, is letting the UFC and its fighters do their thing. That tells us that from their perspective, the value of the attention and the product that the UFC is giving them to deliver, the value of that to them outweighs any negative implications, any negative effects on their brand due to this relationship with the UFC and its fighters. Before you say, oh, it's business, it's not Paramount's job to regulate the UFC or its fighters, just remember that in brand deals, when you're talking about one business or individual endorsing or representing or using the intellectual property, the brand of another company, especially a big media conglomerate, there usually are tightly negotiated quality controls, morality clauses that are then have to be balanced against the partner's creative control, creative expression. That's true in all rights deals. That's true in licenses and influencer marketing agreements that we do for our clients, for example, in the fashion space and in the media space. We have very strict language in our contracts that say certain conduct is unacceptable, and that gives our client discretion to terminate the relationship if the brand partner is going to make them look bad. Although I haven't seen the contract, it'd be hard to believe that these big media rights companies with top-notch lawyers don't have quality control and morality based provisions and termination clauses in their agreements with the UFC. But we see that whether it's Disney or whether it's Paramount, we're still waiting this week. They tend to be quiet and let the UFC do its thing, even though they and not exercise these provisions. And all we can say is clearly their business calculus is that what the US gives them as far as attention and a product that they can sell is more valuable than the damage, the cost to their brand identity when the UFC fighters like Josh Hokit say crazy things. Lastly, to take an even bigger step back, as we think about all the actors at this event, the UFC, Paramount, and the White House, we have to realize that while this event generally went pretty well, take out the controversies, it was a well produced event. The constituents who it was designed for seemed very happy about it. But these three parties, the UFC, Paramount, and the White House, may have won the battle, but lost a political economic war for some of the pet projects that they're trying to push. We talked about how the $8 billion rights deal between Paramount and the UFC has shaped how the UFC puts together its product, has shaped the distribution choices of Paramount, has shaped the brand control and quality control choices that Paramount is making. And it makes sense because $8 billion is a lot of money, right? It is, but there are levels to this. And the levels are that let's not forget that one of the reasons that Paramount might benefit from being friendly with the UFC, besides the money, friendly with the UFC and Dana White, who are very close to President Trump and the Trump administration and have helped him get elected. This is documented. Being close to the UFC and Dana White can help Paramount with its bigger business strategy. A very specific example, so you don't think I'm a conspiracy theorist, is Paramount Skydance's proposed acquisition of WB Discovery. When you have an acquisition of one company by another company, giant companies in the same space, this automatically raises red flags about antitrust. You don't want one business having such a huge market share or control in other ways that they're able to treat consumers unfairly. That's where the government steps in and regulates with antitrust. Well, this huge acquisition of Paramount Skydance of WB Discovery raised, of course, antitrust concerns, but it was recently approved by Trump's DOJ. Coincidence? You tell me. With that said, this event, with the combination of a private commercial business getting the benefit of federal property and federal, at least, complicit endorsement, the fact that we had cage fighting on the White House lawn, which cage fighting still is shocking offensive to a lot of people in this country, although I love it, and even the Michelle Obama insults, regardless of how you feel about it, again, it's ridiculous. That has all brought a lot of negative attention to the UFC, to this event, and more importantly, as Luke Thomas has said, has shed light on the close relationship between the UFC and the Trump administration, that they've been in bed together this whole time. And now my question is whether that will actually backfire for the Trump administration, the UFC, and Paramount, because now people are paying attention to this relationship and looking to push back. That Paramount Skydance acquisition of WB Discovery, certain states, California, New York, are gearing up to sue to try to block that deal. This White House card, it brought all of our attention at the same time to the UFC, to this one sport, to this one event. While it was a great fight event, as a fight fan, I loved it. It was one for the history books. As a lawyer who focuses on corporate transactional work and advises companies in the media and in the M&A space, I can see how all the storylines, our reaction to the card, how it was distributed, how various parties are dealing with the aftermath, all of those become clear when you apply a legal and business lens. That's what we do on this show, Watch the Ops. Look at business opportunities, and we also look at real operating businesses and break them down for you, giving you implications for your own business. Let me know in the comments what you think, one, about the card as a whole. Do you think it was a good card from a fight perspective? What do you think is next for the various fighters? Two, what do you think about the drama and controversy?